A spacefaring colonization fleet suffers a catastrophe, forcing a woman named Rem Savaram to sacrifice herself to send two young twin brothers, Vash and Knives, to the nearby planet Noman's land. Many years later, the survivors of the colony fleet manage to survive the harsh environment of Noman's land thanks to plants, which provide much-needed water and electricity. In the meantime, Vash has become an infamous outlaw nicknamed Vash the Stampede, with a massive bounty on his head, and is found by a pair of reporters named Meryl Strife and Roberto De Niro who protect him from military police seeking to apprehend him to earn the bounty. They then arrive at the town of Geniora Rock, where Vash is welcomed as a hero, but he is troubled that the town's plant is failing. The military police catch up and arrest Vash, but he knocks out the leader in a duel and destroys a cluster bomb he launched with a single bullet. When Roberto asks Vash what he is afraid of, he responds that he is wondering about the whereabouts of Nye, now going by the name Millions Knives, as he is responsible for Rem's death and stranding humanity on Noman's land. Vash explains to Meryl and Roberto that he has been mistakenly accused of stealing plants when it is really Knives who is responsible. Their interview is then interrupted when the entire town of Geniora Rock attacks Vash, seeking to claim the bounty on his head so they can repair their broken-down plant. However, a pair of outlaws called the Hard Punch Nebraskas, consisting of an elderly father and his son Goffsef, enter the fray to claim the bounty as well. Realizing the townspeople are in danger, Vash leads the Nebraskas away into the desert and evades them. Frustrated they lost their bounty, the Nebraskas decide to attack Geniora Rock instead and steal their remaining plant. Vash returns and confronts the Nebraskas, but during the fight, Goffsef is thrown from a cliff. Vash convinces the townspeople to save Goffsef, which results in them and the Nebraskas befriending each other. Then, Vash attempts to quietly leave, with Roberto guessing that he wants to avoid Knives tracking him down. However, strange insect-like machines suddenly attach themselves to Goffsef and explode. More machines appear and attach themselves to Vash and the townspeople. Roberto explains this is the tactic of the infamous E.G. Hamilton, who enjoys killing people with bombs. Vash flushes Hamilton from concealment, but he then attempts to steal the town's plant. Vash, Meryl, and Roberto manage to grapple Hamilton and force him to disable the bombs attached to everyone, or be blown up with them. Hamilton disables the bombs, but Vash stops the townspeople from taking his life. Knives then arrives at the town, killing Hamilton and several townspeople and cutting off the elder Nebraska's arm. He steals the town's plant, but before he leaves, he unleashes a massive attack that completely destroys the town. In the aftermath, with many of the townspeople badly injured or killed, the survivors angrily tell Vash to leave when they realize Knives is his brother. Vash takes his leave and heads east towards July City to pursue Knives. While driving Vash and Roberto to July City, Meryl accidentally hits a traveling priest carrying a large wrapped cross. They take him to a nearby refueling station where they find the inhabitants murdered except for a young boy. Suddenly, the whole group is swallowed from below by a grand worm. Inside the cavernous body, the boy runs off, and Meryl and Roberto disappear as well. Vash and the priest are then ejected from the worm through its spout, but Vash allows them to be swallowed again to save the others. Vash realizes that the boy is controlling the worm, and the priest unwraps the cross to reveal a highly advanced weapon which he uses to fire at the boy and slice the worm in half from the inside. After the group is reunited and dine on worm meat, he reveals that his name is Nicholas D. Wolfwood and offers to travel with them. Later, Wolfwood secretly meets up with the boy, who is really Zazie the Beast, revealing they are both in the employ of Knives. Vash and his friends come across an abandoned settlement which relied on wind power instead of plants for survival. However, the wind has long stopped. They are suddenly attacked by massive cyborg, which is intent on killing Vash. As Vash evades the cyborg, it is slowly revealed that the God-fearing village was struggling due to the lack of wind, and a boy named Rollo was picked to be the next sacrifice to obtain God's blessing. Rollo ran into the desert and was found by Vash, who promised to protect him. However, Rollo was still sacrificed and taken by Knives' organization. Their experiments turned him into a powerful cyborg. He was then set loose and returned to slaughter the entire village. Knives is now exploiting Rollo's resentment towards Vash for failing to protect him. Vash tries to calm Rollo down, who hesitates. However, Wolfwood shoots him through the head, killing him. Vash is furious at Wolfwood, but he reminds Vash of his failure to protect the boy who had his humanity taken from him. Meryl and Roberto drop Vash and Wolfwood off at a port to board a sand steamer bound for July. However, during transit, Vash is attacked by an assassin that Wolfwood recognizes as Livio. Years ago, Wolfwood met Livio in the Hopeland orphanage, where Wolfwood befriended the younger boy. Wolfwood was later taken away by Knives' organization, the Eye of Michael, where he was injected with an experimental drug over the course of months. The drug strengthened his body, but also prematurely aged him into an adult, and he was subsequently coerced into joining the Eye of Michael to protect Livio. Back in the present, Vash and Wolfwood attempt to non-lethally neutralize Livio. Zazie and Legato Bluesummers observe the battle, and Legato decides to complicate matters by sabotaging the sand steamer, sending it on a collision course towards Hopeland. At the same time, the Bad Lads gang launch a raid by boarding the sand steamer. Now caught between Livio, the steamer's security forces, and the Bad Lads gang, Vash and Wolfwood are forced to decide between who to save and who to kill. Wolfwood decides that stopping Livio is his responsibility, and they begin firing their weapons at each other at close range. Although they are hit multiple times, their modified bodies quickly repair themselves. Vash heads inside the sand steamer, where he neutralizes some of the Bad Lads gang and meets Meryl and Roberto. Vash takes them to the deck, where he then assists Wolfwood in fighting Livio. Wolfwood manages to reach out to Livio, who finally remembers his close relationship with Wolfwood and the horrible deeds he performed for the Eye of Michael. He then shoots himself in the head. Unhappy with this turn of events, Legato activates the steamer's ion cannon and aims it at Hopeland, but Vash, Wolfwood, and Meryl work together to redirect it. The massive sand steamer continues towards Hopeland, so while Wolfwood heads to the engine room to shut down the steamer's engines, Vash heads for the plant chamber. Outside, Legato and Zazie recover Livio's body and withdraw. Wolfwood, Meryl, and Roberto track Vash to the plant chamber, where they see him communicating with a living being within the plant and also revealing that he has plant-like abilities. Vash experiences a flashback to the human colonization fleet, where it is revealed that both Vash and Knives are independents, human-like beings born from regular plants. He regretted trusting Knives with the command codes for the ships which he used to sabotage and destroy most of the fleet. Suffering from guilt, Vash wandered the desert, where he was rescued by the survivors of Ship 3, led by Louita Leitner. Despite the survivors' mistrust, especially from second-in-command Brad, Louita insisted on keeping Vash alive, albeit in captivity. Months later, after Ship 3's plant began malfunctioning, Vash could sense its distress and insisted on seeing it. He used his powers to heal the plant, which led to him to being freed and becoming accepted as an official member of Ship 3. 5 years passed as Vash began traveling with Brad to other crashed ships to heal their plants. Now settled in, Ship 3 gave him his signature red jacket. However, Brad eventually managed to repair Ship 5's black box, which revealed Vash and Knives' role in the crash. Overhearing this, Vash left to atone for his mistake. He eventually arrived at another crashed ship, where he encountered Knives. Vash and Knives witnessed the survivors of the crashed ship use up their plants to power their new city, causing Knives to swear revenge against all humanity. He struck out, killing the human guards, and when Louita arrived to retrieve Vash, Knives ordered him to kill her. Vash refused, and when Knives tried to kill her, it caused Vash to unintentionally open a gate in his left arm. Knives removed Vash's arm to close the gate and then withdrew, promising that within a century he would destroy millions of humans and populate the planet with plants. In the present, 150 years later, Vash wakes up in Ship 3, which intervened to stop the sand steamer. The much older Luita shows Meryl and Roberto a huge terrarium containing flora with which they plan to terraform Noman's land. However, Meryl and Roberto are kidnapped by Zazie and taken to Knives Base in July. Zazie reveals that they are in fact a hive mind representing the collective will of the indigenous worms of Noman's land, who are trying to determine whether they would benefit most by aligning themselves with humans or plants. Vash and Wolfwood arrive in July, where Vash reveals he knows Wolfwood has been working for Knives. At Knives Base, Meryl and Roberto meet the researcher Bill Conrad, who explains that he has been attempting to create a new type of weaponized human, which would be better adapted to the hostile conditions of Noman's land. However, his experiments, such as Monev the Gale, Nicholas, and Livio, have ended in failure. He is now using cloned tissue from Knives in an attempt to create a new type of human-plant hybrid type of humanity, which are independents, like Knives and Vash. When Meryl expresses pity for them, one named Elendira bursts from her capsule and attacks her and Roberto. Vash and Wolfwood arrive just in time to save Meryl from Elendira, but Roberto is mortally wounded. He entrusts his signature Derringer pistol to Meryl before dying, and she decides to confront Knives herself. Wolfwood parts ways with Vash now that his mission is complete. Vash confronts Knives, who drops him into a pitfall trap, intending to remake him as the perfect independent. Vash is dropped into a tank, where Knives forcefully initiates mental connection with him. Meanwhile, Meryl heads to find Vash, and is outraged when Wolfwood states that Vash is no longer his concern. She reaches Conrad's lab, where he explains that plants are a conduit between their physical powers and its source, in a core which exists in a higher dimension. Knives intends to synchronize with Vash, using his unique ability to open a two-way gate to the higher dimension. Knives plans to use the core to give every plant a soul, making them all independents and guaranteeing humanity's extinction. Vash resists, as Knives manipulates his memories and shows him that there was a third independent child on their ship who was used for cruel experiments. Knives finally breaks Vash's will by saying he brought down the colonial fleet for Vash's benefit. When the brothers are fully synchronized, Knives opens the gate and travels to the core. Outside, Vash begins spawning tendrils that begin destroying July as they form a massive flowering humanoid figure, while Knives proclaims the independence will bring a new order to the world. Knives makes contact with the core to birth a new generation of independents. Meryl pleads with Vash to wake up, and her voice ultimately causes him to regain his senses, ejecting Knives from the higher dimension. Knives then battles Vash for control of the core, as Wolfwood takes Meryl to safety. Eventually, Vash loads the core into his gun and fires it into space to safely dispose of its energy, but Knives dives into the beam to try and recover it, but fails and is presumably killed. Vash then impacts in July City, inadvertently destroying the entire city. 2 years later, Vash has become a fugitive again, with the remaining cities posting an unprecedented $60 billion bounty on his head. Meryl pays a visit to the city's ruins to pay her respects to Roberto and is warned by Zazie that other humans from Earth will be coming. Additionally, Meryl is informed by her superiors that she is being assigned a new partner named Millie Thompson. Meanwhile, an amnesiac Vash is living quietly in a small settlement. In outer space, another human colony fleet led by the independent Chronica detects a gate disturbance and traces its location to Noman's land.